And we're now live. Good evening and welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly. My name is John, preposterous rhyme, and you're very welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly if we've just gone live. I want to say a big hello to... Oh, I can hear myself coming back. Okay. Welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly. The panel this evening includes Luke Brennan from Dunleary, Neil Curran in Dublin, Vanessa Foran from Cork, but in Dublin. And we're going to be joined by Olga Cronin, Shane O'Neill, and Stephen Garland as well. And I think another special guest. Okay. But we're
not special, John.
Oh God, you're very special. No, I mean...
We're mediocre. Average guests.
We're the chorus.
Well, no, you're more than that. You're the main chorus. I wanted to talk. We have a bunch of stuff to get on to, but Vanessa, I wanted to talk to you about the John Halligan story. Now, I don't know where Luke or Neil were, but I didn't take this particularly seriously till mid-afternoon when I read a comment and it seemed like something more serious than I had presumed.
What did you read, John?
Well, just that John Halligan had asked the senior civil servant during an interview for a post as a permanent secretary or
senior civil servant post, was it?
It was I think a permanent secretary post.
Nice job.
John Halligan during the interview process asked the woman was she married and did she have children. Now I just assume this is Halligan's age and a person.
Yeah, you know what? Probably it's his age. Probably it's the culture he came up in. Probably it's what he's used to in the workplace. But the lads have had 20 years to know this isn't on.
But my assumption was that this is just like him having the chat. You know, kind of running out of things to say. And, you know, I'm not trying to. I found it quite.
The boys.
I was surprised. I found it trivial. We don't know whether this woman got the job or not.
Well, no, but I think, it's probably gone to town on him because I think the alliance has just fallen apart, and so there's probably a bit of accelerant there on the amount of coverage it's gotten and the amount of traction it's gotten. Okay, I mean the lady got 7,500, which in my opinion was too low. Because it's clear if she proved discrimination, obviously he didn't ask that of any of the male candidates.
Right.
So it was out. And there's also the thing is that the candidate herself took it all the way. Most women wouldn't do that. They would just back off. They would just go back under the covers, or they would just go and live as I've done many times. Just go and live and fight another day. She stuck it out. She went to the relation commission, and I think she probably deserved more money than 7,500. But nonetheless,
can I just say, just in relation to the not asking the men, that. Now, John Halligan's a man of a certain age, and what they tend to do is overcompensate, and it sounds like he's overcompensating in his office. He said, "Oh, I let them come in at 10." You know, it's like they're kind of fragile creatures, you know, rather than workers. So he's he's like doubling down on what he should be doing, and thereby making a mess of things. You know?
Well, yeah, I would have thought his department would have groomed him a bit better for what he's saying now. Is like, oh, I was just trying to put her at ease. And I mean, that's actually, if it's a very senior civil servant, that's incredibly patronising.
Trying to
put her at ease, because poor Dote, it's like Gay Byrne. Well, what does he do to put the lads at ease?
Well,
what football team do you follow?
Dr. Ballygunner.
Yeah, Neil, were you as curious about this as Vanessa?
I thought it got an awful lot of coverage. I sympathise with him. I'm willing to accept the fact that he wasn't aware of what he was doing. I mean, in terms of I interview people myself, and I train people around that area. You just have to be so careful nowadays. In one of the offices I go to, there's that long journey from reception up in the lift, a couple of floors out into a room that you'd interview someone with. And you have to be careful that you don't make a slip when you're in the lift, in that awkward silence going, how's the kids or something like that, because that can come back to bite you, even though you haven't formally sat down. So I do sympathize, but, I've got great time for John Halligan. I think he's a great character. But as Vanessa said, personality and the individual aside, it is wrong to do it. I did also think the amount that she got was quite low. The bigger question I'd have though is kind of what in the, that's him ringing now, in the civil service, like, I mean, who's surely there's a policy around recruitment and what can and can't. I mean, I know certainly in a lot of companies, the bigger companies anyway, their HR will go to great lengths to ensure that people know, at a minimum, these are the questions you cannot ask. I remember one friend of mine saying,
this is where I'm surprised that the department didn't groom him. If he was sitting in on interviews, that he didn't have HR with him, or even now subsequent to the settlement, the hearing and the settlement, that he hasn't had his department's press office haven't coached him somewhere or another than this. I was trying to put her at ease.
Well, I mean, as I said about his office, well, apparently John Halligan's office is very mother-friendly. They don't have to come into
family friendly.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
They hate fathers.
Yeah. Luke, or were you?
Distinguish. Parenting doesn't distinguish. It's parenting.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry, Luke.
No, it's one of those situations, isn't it? That if I mean, you can look at it from one perspective and say there are people, as you say, of that age, and we all have people like that in our life that sort of we're sometimes rolling our eyes, but that doesn't really justify anything. You have to sort of think about stepping into the shoes of someone who's doing an interview. You do an interview, and the smallest thing can knock you off, and if that's something, there's a reason why that's sort of a no-go area, because it's something that people would obviously have a sensitivity to. It seems that it would be something that you're sort of being sort of judged on that you shouldn't be judged on, and like them's the rules. I think there has to be that sensitivity. The rule has to be upheld.
Yeah, and I think this is quite common as well. It's a common occurrence. I'm just not sure how many people follow up in the courts. Be interesting to see if we'll see. Because of how much attention this got, will we see an increase in these being brought before the equality authority? But this is quite common though. This kind of behaviour
on application forms. Then for the civil service, there's no, your status is not asked, is it?
No. If for very senior posts, it would never feature. Like, it might feature at some of the very lower grades, or even at entry level posts. If it may feature, if you were a mature student or something like that, you're saying, oh, how's the family coping with you going back to school and all this, with exams and stuff. Yeah. It may come in like that, and it would be perfectly understandable. But at a very, very senior post, it's assumed once you're interviewed, say at my level, John, if I was applying for a senior finance director post or something like that, it's assumed I've passed my exams.
Yeah.
It's assumed I have the 20 years that they've looked for, and it's assumed all that. It's completely to get going, and how do you? She deserved better. She deserved better at that level. If you're saying it was that role, all the candidates deserved better.
Okay, it's the thin end of the other wedge that we were talking about last week, the Michael Colgan thing, and just going back on that. Last week when we were talking about it, it had appeared in the Sunday Times, but there had been no follow-up really till the Saturday's Irish Times, I think. And now, speaking of overcompensating, I mean, now RTE are overcompensating for the fact that they didn't cover it in
Or they haven't shut up about him now, is it? Basically,
well, they've covered it extensively now, and they probably will do a few more shows out of it. Going over the coverage of the last week on that, Neil, perhaps did you have any view of how the things have escalated and senses?
Well, I mean, you guys talked about it extensively last week. What I did like to read today was there's going to be training brought in for people involved in the arts who are at an organization level around bullying, harassment training, and that. Now, I didn't read the finer details of it, so I'm not sure if it's mandatory or if it's based on a sign up, on a voluntary sign up method. I would like to think it's mandatory. We, coming from the improv world, certainly in the US, in recent times, there's been a few scandals, some which appear to be justified, and some which ended up being a witch hunt that backfired. But it certainly highlighted the need within the improv world for some kind of independent body, and that people can make anonymous complaints to. And it's good to see that. Certainly from an Irish perspective, of course, these things always happen on the back of something awful, but that there will be this avenue now for people to report incidences like this, and hopefully we can stamp it out and get the bad eggs out of the arts. But swift action.
Yeah, but Neil, the arts doesn't own this behaviour. It's right across the board.
Absolutely.
To be fair, there's an element. It's all coming out now, and I think I might have said this to John last week or offline or something. I know I've said it or wrote it somewhere, was that this has all started to come out since Trump and grab her by the pussy, and people have taken confidence that everyone now recognises that that's not normal, it's not acceptable, it's not cool. And if you really look back over the last 12 months, a lot of the cases, it's accelerated at the moment here because it's in our face here in Ireland. But it has come about from that moment, from my perspective. So I wonder, this could be Trump's legacy, folks. There's a new world order in terms of what's acceptable and what you think you can do. And
Vanessa, what is the legacy though? We have the rights commissioner. I've forgotten her name briefly, but she's gone into mediate. I don't agree with that. I actually, that's in-house. That's their own internal. But this person is she's from outside.
Well, she's got a private contracting gig, really. So they're paying her fees.
Yeah.
Now, okay, she can claim she's independent and all this, and I'm not going to criticise the appointment or anything like that, but it's still in-house. But what I don't get about the whole thing is what subsequently, I know we did a huge amount on this last week, John, right? So, but the Arts Council actually had a policy not to have their own staff on their own with Michael Colgan. They actually had a health and safety policy. They may not have been written in, but that is a health and safety guideline.
And they didn't tell anybody else.
They didn't tell anybody else. I'll be honest with you. That's where the buck stops now for me. I used to think it was the board as well. No, but the Arts Council need to own this behaviour as well.
Well, if they were avoiding being with him alone and
their own staff, but they didn't give a shit about anybody else's staff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a possibility of a compensation there to some of the victims, I guess.
Look again, Arts Council, who give them the money to keep the doors open and right. They themselves had a policy not to be on their own, not to allow anybody employed by the Arts Council be in Michael's company on their own. But they didn't give a shit about anybody else being in Michael Colgan's company. Can I take that from that they said and did nothing, and they kept pouring money in there?
Well, Neil?
If that's true, that's shocking. That's just akin to what... Oh, I just don't know. I think, but I just coming from an arts background where we take it's like if you take improv, which is viewed in many countries, there's a lot of what might be considered an amateur aspect to it. But you get a lot of people who come from vulnerable positions getting into it as an art form, maybe to build confidence and build skills. And, this kind of, you have people who prey on that kind of behavior, and there's no place for it whatsoever. And it needs to be it needs to be shut down. I just get annoyed thinking about it, but you see where I'm going with this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like Vanessa's point is a really good one. That like I hadn't actually sort of realized that before, that this, like, you could very easily call this a reaction to the Trump thing. And I mean, at the time, I mean, everyone was very disappointed that he could behave that way, say those things, and still get elected. But I suppose now we're seeing the sort of the wave that comes afterwards, and that people are looking very carefully at this stuff, and and obviously rightly so. I mean, particularly sort of with the sort of work environment where, I mean, like people sort of should be different people at work. They should have different rules. They should behave, in a way that's, about getting things done. And there's just no place for this. I mean, I've worked most of my life in a sort of technical environment, and I suppose maybe, sort of, you go into the sort of arts area, and there's more of a crossover. There's more sort of social stuff happening and all that sort of thing. But so, sort of maybe more rules are needed there as well, but it's great to see, everything be looked at. Like, I hate to see, people like the Arts Council or any sort of state body not really sort of, like, I hate sloppiness. There's a lot of sloppiness in Irish government, in terms of how things are done. It's about, sort of getting in there, sort of holding the fort, and there isn't an awful lot, sort of
getting to the end of the day.
Yeah, not a lot of work, like good, clear work going on getting.
Sorry, can I just to? I know that you say it's in every profession, but I think this 30-year thing with the Gate and Colgan is quite kind of unique in a way, because there were obviously a lot of complaints about him. There was nothing done.
Again,
subsidised theatre in Dublin.
This is where their board needs to be tackled. Now, obviously the board has changed over the 30 years.
Well, the two trustees are Nicholas Kearns and Martin McAleese.
But they may not have been the trustees for the whole term.
Yeah, but they seem to have thrown Colgan under the bus in a sense, that they've distanced themselves from it.
But sure, it's very easy to do that now. The man has gone from the premises.
Yeah, well...
like, who were the board when they made the first settlement back in the early 90s? Was it the early 90s that lady got a settlement because he asked an inappropriate question at an interview as well? Like, this goes back to the top of the show. You've had 20 years warning to keep your trap shut, Anyway, so the board then.
Could they not move them around to another theatre?
Sure, where would you go? Like, where do you go?
But I think it just represents the power. I don't think we're fully cognizant of maybe the amount of influence he had, to be fair, Well,
you see, I think these people, it's all about control with them. And they control so many productions, and they promise so many people, oh, I'll have you in for this. I'm going to be doing this next year, and I promise you'll be in for this one.
Yeah, well, okay.
Is that how it works? Neil is more in the artistic scene than I am, but I imagine that it's all about control with these. No matter what part of business you're in, whether it's the artistic community or finance or politics, it's all about
Vanessa,
control.
You're a finance person. Surely to God, there's somebody signing those checks over the years that goes, how many payouts does it take before someone goes, I think this is wrong? What does it take, But
the board would have had to have known. They would have seen financial reports every month anyway. It's in a public institution, so the checkbooks probably needed 2 signatures. Checks over a certain value needed 2 signatures that weren't payroll. So,
yeah,
the board is very small. I noticed that the board is only 5 on the board, which would have included him.
Yes,
so there was only 4 other people,
and that's why it made it sort of very difficult to contain.
So there's high risk of dominance there. I know we spoke about boards before. About RT has 12.
Yeah.
Ideally, at least they have the 5. 7 to 9 is a bit healthier because you only need 3 people to turn up to have a quorum. So Michael could have called a board meeting in his front room and have only 2 people. That's basically it. Only 3 people need to turn up for a quorum.
I've heard the complaints. Again, I'm sure we'll never find out, but why was he allowed to have this power, you know?
Well, this is where Leo was kind of a bit of a... I'm afraid to say something. But he kind of said about... I welcome the appointment of an independent HR expert into the gate. Oh, but welcome what? He should be shutting it down. I am freezing all funding until an investigation is done by the Controller and Auditor General, and to make sure there hasn't been other settlements, and to make sure that there has been this happened. Oh, Stephen.
Stephen, hello, Stephen. Stephen has joined us.
Hi, how you doing?
Hello. Can you hear?
Is my mic working?
Yeah, your mic is working. Just if you can stick in the earphones. Put them in. I would.
Right. Okay. I can hear everybody perfectly. Sorry.
Okay. It's just we might hear ourselves coming back.
So I'll use my headphones. Yeah.
Oh, the headphone, if possible. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Sorry.
Not at all.
Still a novice at this.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. There's Stephen Garland. Stephen, you're off to Russia.
Sure, very soon, you know, and I kind of have to remind myself every day. It's like 10 days or something, so it's quite exciting, and nervous excitement as well. So it's all good.
It's very good, and this is for stem cell treatment for your condition.
Yeah, and it's basically. Now I got you. I have no. I've got a PPMS, a certain type, the least common type of MS, and basically it's a no treatment, no cure kind of gig. And so for that reason, they don't tell you. Nobody tells you that there is a treatment called HSCT, and I think it's quite conspiratorial in how the neurologists I've experienced now of 3 countries, and nobody will tell you about HSCT. And yes, there is, like in Ireland, just in Ireland, I know maybe 20 people going over and back, people who have been there, done it, going there, and continuing to go there. They're getting appointments right up till September next year.
And the treatment is about 35,000.
It ends up, some of the people who've been there before put 70,000 kind of from an A to Z kind of figure. But to be honest, Mr. Trump has been one of the biggest helps to my fundraising, because since he got elected, the ass fell out of the dollar, you know. I pay in dollars, you know, or the cost is in dollars. So I'm all for Trump's banality as a president, and whatever he's doing to the dollar is all good for me, you know.
But it's seriously expensive, Stephen, isn't it? And you've raised this from donations, haven't you, really, from crowdfunding? Yeah,
and a couple of events. I've had great support. This came around very quickly to me. I'm a promoter, and I thought, you know, I thought I had 12 months to. I didn't think I was going until November 2018. So this thing has all come around very suddenly. I got a cancellation, and basically it came around just on September the 4th. You can go on November the 20th. You want to go? So it's really a sooner better than later kind of type thing. So I took the hand off them and kind of said, okay, I'll go. So I had to find the money really, really quickly, and but I managed to do that, and I'm not completely there. I put 70,000 is a good figure, because there's a bit of aftercare when you get it's a hardcore treatment, you know.
Yeah.
You've got to collapse my immunity completely, which means I go for, it's 35 days of hardcore chemo for a bit of it. And then you go into isolation for 10 to 15 days because you have no immunity. And then you put your stem cells back in and reboot like a computer. It's kind of logically easy to grasp, but at the same time, your body has to go through it. And that's quite hardcore. And they say 6 months before you kind of, I re-emerge like a beautiful butterfly that I am.
That is terrible, Stephen. And you're going to be there for Christmas then in Moscow, is it?
Yeah, but we became Jewish lately, so we're not doing Christmas. Mainly, my wife is only interested in buying presents largely, and but yeah, you know, it's I'm walking with a stick, you know, and with primary progressive, the next step is a wheelchair. There's a rating. I'll be very quick with this, yeah?
No, Stephen, go on, please.
Right, okay. There's an EDSS, is the rating of mobility. So most people begin at obviously 0, and then as you progress in different ways for different reasons, your mobility is going down. So people growing up through this kind of mobility scale, I walk with a cane now. That's the stage I'm at, and I'm 3.5. 6 would mean you're in a hardcore wheelchair. And I have a mobility scooter out here that I use for, you know, ironically, to go to the gym, so you know, but I can't walk to the gym, and that's the reality. And the next step is like 6 on this EDSS scale.
And that's the next stage for you without this treatment, is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to a wheelchair, and then you go through all the phases. Then you go through a kind of cognitive collapse, and your body begins to. It's neurological. It's like motor neuron, all these nasty diseases, and so you know, I'm not going to hang around waiting for I kind of like myself cognitively, and so we're not going to hang around. We're not going to hang around. So the only option is in the whole world of neurology is HSCT, and they do not tell you about it. But only 10% of people with MS have PPMS. Other people, other people have lots of people. There's 9,000 people in Ireland with MS, and like 85% of them they've got what's called relapsing MS. It's like a malaria or something. It flares up, and they're quite normal. You know them. There's tons of people. There's 9,000 knocking around Ireland, you know. Right. And but they have drugs that they can suppress them, can suppress the symptoms. And so PPMS, the only thing I have is vitamin D, you know. So
really,
it's not. Yeah, that's it. Suck it up until you implode.
Vanessa, were you going to say something there?
No, I was just laughing. Sorry.
Laughing at my predicament, Vanessa.
No. How's the fundraising going, Stephen?
Yeah, where are you at, Stephen, now with them?
And I'm so glad. I'm going to be. So this Sunday night, it's very exciting, and we have a gig called Art Disruptors in the Grand Social in Dublin. I'm bringing the fundraising to Dublin, and really, and we're also I have got the biggest thing I've got going on at the moment is managed to get Johnny had a hand in it as well. Johnny, you know.
Johnny, he's actually off this week because his cousin died. Sorry, I meant to say that, and I hope he's well. Sorry.
Sure. So he's out there somewhere, but yeah. So it's a sad week for Johnny, and Johnny was helping me big time, you know, with all this kind of. This is the end of the fundraising, let's say, and we had everything scheduled. I'm after get John Delaney and the FEI gave me 2 pairs of premium tickets for the match on Tuesday, so pretty hot tickets, and so I put
tomorrow.
No, next Tuesday.
No, but the raffle is tomorrow, isn't it?
The raffle is on Sunday, and the match is on Tuesday. So and so we draw the raffle live at this gig, the Art Disruptors, which will involve members of Keela and a bunch of people, a bunch of great artists. I got comedy from Eric Lawler and Willie White, who I have to say I've been working in comedy 25 years. And Willie White, I've had him on a couple of fundraisers with Jason Byrne and different things. He's the funniest fucker in Ireland, man. Sorry.
Who is? Who's funny?
Willie White.
He wasn't.
Willie was.
Tell me about he wasn't a come out to begin with, was he? He worked in RTE, did he?
No. He came off that Des Bishop had a show called. He's from Ballymun, you know, and so Des Bishop did a show, which Eric Lawler as well. So I've got 2 How Are You comics for the price of one from the flats.
That's great. Speaking of How Are You comics, Brendan O'Carroll and his where's Vanessa gone? Okay, we've lost Vanessa because Vanessa can probably explain what these the Mauritius accounts are all about and how you get money.
The paradise.
Vanessa, just talking briefly about Brendan O'Carroll, who seems to be the sacrificial lamb this week for these Paradise Papers. Can you explain how his company were paying their actors? Vanessa, we lost you.
No headset on, is it?
Okay. What the hell? I think they were. Vanessa?
I turned off my mic when I left because I didn't want to be noisy. I had to go out and get. I had to go out and get a phone.
It's a double Mauritius. They
It's all It's basically
sorry, Vanessa. Before you do that, Stephen, tell me how shy you are. What's the figure you're shy of in fundraising?
We're down to the last 10K, and so 10,000. I think I'm kind of there with the family and friends have kind of come in to kind of cover me up to that. So and it's very tiring, this fundraising. So I'm glad to call a halt to it on Sunday night. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, you seem a lot more tired than last time we spoke. You were kind of energized and up and everything, but.
That was the Catalan issue.
Yeah, you were very exercised. How are things with your friends in Catalan, in Barcelona?
Well, I'm hopping over to Vanessa here, so I'm conscious of that.
No.
Please.
Tell us about your friends.
Brendan O'Carroll's biting his nails at the moment.
I said he might give you your 10 grand.
He's a bit of a philanthropist like that, I believe. He's an incredible comedy story, Brendan O'Carroll. You know, I don't believe there's much mirth in the dude, but everything. You see, he nobody would listen to him for 20 years in Ireland, and because of that, he was just writing for stage all the time. So he had the publishing rights to everything, and so that's he's the richest man in comedy possibly. So he would need to hide some of that wealth.
Brendan, that's not Brendan's money. It's not Brendan O'Carroll himself.
Okay, it's one of the cast. I don't know, but
three members of the cast have opted to get their live show income. I think it's not their broadcast income.
Oh, it's just a live show, is it?
It's not. It's a different revenue stream. To the show, and 3 members of the cast have opted to take that income through Mauritius by way of loan back to them.
Yeah.
It's a bit tasteless. Well, but you need to pay somebody to set it up, and to pay somebody to set it up is probably going to cost you about 60 grand a year. So
Mauritius takes 12.5% as well. The Mauritius bank takes 12.5%.
It's probably something like that.
You're very well informed.
Well, it would be a commission, all right. Yeah.
12.5%. Luke, have you money in Mauritius? Are you?
Of course, yeah. I did actually meet Brendan O'Carroll once. I was I was in college down in Carlow, and we were making a sort of Rag Week video. He was down as one of the comedians, and he did strike me as a particularly decent guy. He sort of. I was a sort of 19-year-old guy trying to sort of do this and that, and he really sort of took time out to sort of give us a few pointers and sort of help us out when he didn't really have to. He seemed like a decent sort.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly somebody with his heart in the right place. It's truly an incredible story whereby 3 of the actors can be in like the millionaire status, you know, or millionaire bracket, just from the live shows as well. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, it's income from another stream that they have, but it is important to know that Brendan Carl doesn't use this type of tax avoidance
himself personally. Where does he live? Is he an Irish resident?
Florida. So he probably has some ex-residential days that he works out.
Brendan Grace also lives in Florida. Is it a Stephen? Is it a Irish comedy kind of?
I have no idea at that scale, you know.
having performed in Florida, I don't think I've ever seen another Irish comedian.
Yeah.
The thing about it all really is, you know, they're still exceptionally wealthy if they did pay the tax here.
Well, these actors, I mean, the possibility is that, say, Mrs. Brown's Boys finishes in about 4 or 5 years, they may not get another gig of that kind of stature. And they literally, you know, 20, 30, 40 years, you know. And
yeah, well one thing
that requires jokes, you mean?
I beg your pardon, Stephen?
One that requires jokes.
So that's the same for all of us in one way, you know. We may. But, I mean, I'm certainly not earning within half of what I was earning 15 years ago.
Well, you've got a sort of steady income, and I don't think actors do at all. I mean, 90% of the profession are out of work. And
yeah, but there is a point for, you know.
That's why you get the Weinsteins, because they'll, you know, they've got that.
The thing that surprised me, John, like that point you made about sort of him being the sacrificial lamb, it surprised me that it was the cast of you know, of that show, and it was Lewis Hamilton, and it was Bono. Like, these are the stories. I mean, I would say, like, as to what goes on in the Paradise Papers, they're fairly minor players relative to what's going on with Saudi princes and apples and whatever else, you know. And like, the fact that that's what's been served up is a bit surprising to me.
Yeah, well, BBC Panorama chased one of the cast of Miss Brown Boys down the street with a microphone.
Well, this is the thing.
While the Queen and Her Majesty was on the list as well.
Yeah, Prince.
Yeah. They're just picking on an Irish sitcom. Anyway, okay, all right, no.
Well, I just think they look to the easy snapshot. Whoever they can get up on Twitter or on their Facebook or on their news feed, their live news feed straight away. And Brendan Carl's fine. The 3, they were sitting ducks for this. That, you know, that the 3 of them were sitting ducks. Lewis Hamilton, you know, these people are names. They're, you know, what do they call the magazines? You know, they're Hello, they're Goss, what else? All these, they're OK magazine. They're targets for all that, and that's what people want to know. They really don't want to know about some recluse living in Scotland hiding away his millions. If nobody knows what he looks like or if he's involved in making widgets, they want to know about Lewis Hamilton. They want to know about the people that are on the telly.
Well, did they do anything illegal?
No, it's not legal. It's just tasteless. And
from a matter of
I mean, they could have avoided tax in certain investment products,
like folk dancing.
Be nice to earn that kind of money that you can do that.
I know.
Wouldn't mind BBC Panorama chasing me across France.
I tell you, you'd be dying for it, wouldn't you?
Well, I think Luke, you were saying that the purge in Saudi Arabia, like, is an absolutely massive story compared to Halligan, and you know. Even the trackers, you know, it is absolutely huge, and
billions moving around. You know, it's like serious sort of. I mean, I saw Murdoch there. They were saying his empire is sort of under threat now because the Saudis are going out of it. It's, you know, like
this guy he had more of Twitter than your man Jack Twitter. You know,
Jack Dorsey. Yeah,
he owns all the.
Who does?
This Al-Weed guy, this Saudi prince who was arrested this week. There was a purge of about 80, purge of the old order in Saudi Arabia. But these guys are huge investors for progressive causes in America as well. Like the SARS kind of stuff, the globalist stuff, the Black Lives Matter, and there's a massive shift there, and it's really quite exciting. But there's nothing in the mainstream press really about it. Have you noticed, Luke?
Yeah, well, I mean, sort of my sort of, I sort of take the news, with a pinch of salt. It's not a big part of my life, to be honest, but I do, sort of feel that. I mean, I think everyone sort of feels that, when like the stuff we're talking about is almost a distraction a lot of the time to, sort of what's worth talking about. I mean, obviously that's probably part of the reason why we're here, right? That sort of there's more to talk about than is being talked about, and like a long form such as this like allows people to properly tease out issues and think about things in a way that you don't get a chance to when sort of people are 5-minute snippets about what Lewis Hamilton is doing or whatever.
Yeah, I think the Paradise Papers are almost as boring as the Panama Papers. There's nothing really to it. I totally agree with Vanessa. These are it's just a huge distraction. Although I Bono's distress didn't really hurt me that much this week. And Neil, I know you're a huge U2 fan. Were you disappointed that he owned a shopping mall in Lithuania?
I mean, that must be an awkward dinner conversation thing. Like, you're one of the biggest rock stars in the world, and there you are talking about shopping centres in Lithuania over lunch with your pals. I think that'd be more embarrassing than finding out there was a tax issue, to be honest. But
I like the fact that it's very kind of Celtic Tiger, isn't it? When
there's a Penny's open in Lithuania next to TK Maxx.
A retail park. They're investing in a retail park.
Luke Brennan is. We spoke for the first time today, Luke, didn't we? Luke has been sending us in stuff onto the site. You're an entrepreneur, Luke.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose the last 15 years I've been running a business, and
entrepreneur.
Yeah, I don't think any entrepreneur likes being called an entrepreneur, but there you go. I mean, like, I suppose it sort of comes from the fact that, as we discussed, like, sort of, I have a sort of heritage in sort of making. Both my parents were potters, and we grew up sort of having a sort of like a small business. Sort of my mum and dad would have been making pots for local restaurants as well as sort of exporting them, and they were also involved in setting up a lot of the sort of sort of craft supports that are there now today. I mean, the pair of them were founding members of the Society of Designers, the Crafts Council, and Ceramics Ireland, which are sort of the main sort of bodies there for those. And they sort of going back to sort of the 50s, 60s, 70s. My father lived down in Kilkenny for about 25 years, and sort of as a sort of like preamble to what went on then in the 60s in Kilkenny, he was down there doing stuff 10 years before that. So there was this famous thing where they brought in the Scandinavians to sort of show us how it's done, and that was sort of the guts of how Kilkenny design came about. But I mean, there was good sort of work being done by sort of native Irish, and I think it's something that we maybe don't sort of fully appreciate our own in that regard. That oftentimes, I think it's probably a hangover from the sort of post-colonial thing that we tend to sort of need to be told sort of what's good, or sort of if the Scandinavians say it's okay, well then it's okay. It's at least it's not the Brits telling us what's good anymore or whatever. But actually, if you look a bit deeper, there's some there always has been some very fine sort of craft work produced in Ireland.
Now, you're Helena Brennan. Anybody who's taking classes learning how to potter inside Dublin probably knows your mum, Helena Brennan.
Yeah, well, I mean, we grew up pretty much with a pottery studio in the house, and sort of Saturday mornings we'd have like a run of sort of classes like through the house for like all of our sort of youth. I sent into you like we were like as a family we appeared on sort of Anything Goes. So it's not my first time at the telly. When I was 7. But sorry.
Angus McNally.
That's right. Yeah, and big hair.
Yeah.
It was very good.
You only had 2 channels in Kilkenny at this time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, like I said, I have this sort of very lovely connection with Kilkenny. You know, it was after that my dad met my mum and moved back up to Dublin. But you know, he was working very much involved in all the work he did. Sort of, you know, I mean, as a sort of, he took the job as sort of art master between Carlow and Kilkenny back in sort of 1939 or something like that. And he started bringing, you know, sort of some of the sort of better known painters' work into Carlow and Kilkenny and showing them in there. And actually, that collection became what's now the Butler Gallery down in Kilkenny.
Wow.
So like, there's a lot of stuff like that, you know, sort of going way back at a time when, you know, there just wasn't, you know, sort of stuff going on. And he was someone who very strongly felt that people's sort of lives were helped by having sort of, you know, sort of creative sort of work available to see and enjoy. I mean, I saw this lovely, you know, sort of article just recently where he had been down in Portlaoise in 1940 bringing this show around because, you know, it was such a success that they thought, well, they're bringing on a tour all around all the VCs down around Ireland. And he was in Portlaoise, and you know, sort of they were asking him, you know, sort of you know, about sort of the paintings and how to interpret them, and you know, he was, you know, talking about how, you know, there was you know, like someone who had spent 10 years like learning how to sort of, you know, paint, and, you know, sort of they'd spent maybe 10 hours and they had a sort of like a secret, a message, and what they were trying to do was, you know, when someone walks along, you know, sort of share that secret with them. You know, I just thought, you know, that lovely way of you know, sort of you know, in a very sort of real way, you know, sort of bringing, you know, sort of the creative output and encouraging people into sort of that area, you know, was very helpful at the time.
Yeah, your father died 20 years ago now, but your mother is still working, and she's...
That's right, yeah. She's just had her 75th birthday, and she had a show there to celebrate that. So she works in high-fired porcelain. I mean, the high-fired the sort of hand-thrown porcelain that she produces. I mean, there's a sort of heritage going back. I mean, the same week she had her show, there was a Sung Dynasty sort of bowl sold in Sotheby's for 26 million. And if you would put it beside my mum's work, you know, there wasn't that much difference. The same clay, same glazes, same sort of techniques used. But not that I'm comparing my mother's work to that, but
it does sound very posh, though. You know, the way you described your mom's work before introducing a 26 million benchmark. But well, it did sound very posh anyway.
I'm trying to big her up, you know. You have to, if you're not going to bring up your mother, who is, you know. I think what's interesting is that it's something that lasted 950 years, you know, and there's a reason why. And we actually sort of ran the show in a sort of a nice sort of room above a Chinese tea rooms, just there, the vintage teapot there in Dublin. And like the Chinese owners there, and you know, they talked about the fact that, you know, the Chinese perspective on porcelain would be that a lot of time the family sort of heirloom and the family sort of, you know, sort of story would be sort of tied up in sort of one piece of porcelain, you know.
Yeah, their story basically being told.
Yeah. Yeah. So and I suppose there was a nice, you know, in terms of my parents, the sort of the route back for them to this tradition was that in around sort of 1900, there was people like Bernard Leach, who was a famous potter, and Shoji Hamada, who brought these sort of methods over to the UK, and they you know, sort of set up down in St. Ives. And my father in the 1940s, you know, visited them and sort of worked in their studio a little bit and brought them over. And even in terms of like sort of when my father was setting up the Crafts Council with my mum, they brought these guys over, you know, like Leach and Hamada came over. And these are, you know, when the Tate in St. Ives reopened there recently, I mean, they have Picasso's and whatever else there, but it was the Leach and Hamada pots that was the sort of opening show that was there, you know. So these are, you know, sort of highly regarded people, and they were brought over to Ireland and sort of really, you know, brought into, my dad was teaching in NCAD at the time, and sort of like to encourage the students, you know. So I think, you know, really trying to sort of, you know, sort of put a fire under what could happen here, you know.
Well, thanks, Luke. What we're trying to do on the site is every Christmas, Irish-made gifts and Irish-made stuff. I mean, some of the stuff is fantastic. Although I'd say some of it's pretty dodgy.
I'd say your mum's stuff is pretty expensive now. That might be more than a stocking filler, I think.
Well, I mean, she had little jugs that she was selling for 20 quid. You know what? It's not.
Oh, that would be up our street, all right.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
I might have a jug actually. How small is the jug?
There was a Chinese collector came and bought the sort of nicest piece at the show, and so that was sort of sold for over €1,000. So that was obviously great for her. That was the most expensive piece she's ever sold.
What was that, a pot? Was it?
Yeah, a little vase that sort of. And you see, the thing is with ceramics is that like sort of it's a sort of hit and miss sort of thing that sort of you can have 10 firings and try and get a particular glaze right. And there's 100 things that can go wrong, and if you get it right, you can spectacular, and that was.
What sort of heat is it? What sort of heat are they?
Like up to 1,200 degrees, and she's down in Wicklow now, and she built her own kiln, and she sort of, wow. She's out there in the winter, and where
in Wicklow is she?
Avoca.
Okay.
And does she have to? Does one have to wear the thing to when she's glazing and whatnot?
Yeah, well, like there was a short film that you put up on the site actually.
Of course, yeah, that's why.
Showed a little bit about sort of how she works, whatever. And my brother Fergal, who's a filmmaker, he's actually working on making a longer sort of 20-minute version of that. So that's hopefully going to be around soon. But yeah, I mean, she's sort of she's working with it. She's also involved in I'm sure people would know of the Arklow potteries. Were sort of going for years.
Yeah, they were industrial pottery.
Yeah,
are they gone? They're no longer, are they?
They're no. Basically, like a Japanese company came in, took them over, didn't really work out. They were a giant conglomerate, and it sort of closed down.
A bit like Carrickline pottery as well.
Yeah, and
pottery as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. And these are sort of sort of bits of our heritage that are sort of falling away. But like this summer, actually, my mother and some other people down there, Pierre Leonard and a few others, had organised, a sort of like a summer sort of pottery sort of showcase where they had some potters come in, do some demonstrations. They also had people like sort of who could evaluate the old Arklow pots, and people could bring along. And those people in tears, sort of who had worked on lines and sort of really, sort of brought back a lovely bit of like our heritage. Really.
Yeah, I suppose there have been whole generations of families would have worked in the large industry.
Yeah.
Potteries, didn't they? Because I certainly know Carrickline missed it when it went.
I didn't know there was one in Carrickline, but I remember going to Arklow, and at the back of it, there were all the misshapen pots. And,
yeah.
A mountain of cups without handles.
Yeah, you get a lot of dodgy pots for one good one, I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, there was a TV show on, maybe it's still running, about the best potter, it's a bit like Bake Off for pottery.
Yeah.
And you could see how precarious this whole firing and thing was.
Yeah, there's a lot to go wrong. And
sorry, come on.
No, I mean it's a thing. There's a nice thing about that as well, in that I mean, and I don't. My sort of level of pottery is very low, but like there's a thing that happens with ceramics where you sort of have to give up, because things are going to go wrong, and that sort of relaxes people and makes it this nice meditative thing.
Yeah. Speaking of mothers, my mother was 80 last week, so I just want to wish her a happy birthday. And she's quite poorly as well, so down in Cork. So, hello. Okay. The presents.
Happy birthday. Don't need mummy.
Many happy returns.
Well, it's important to remember our mums.
You should bring your mum on. You should bring your mum on with her pots.
Sport.
Yeah, we could not get your mum on, Luke, with one of the pots.
So I'll tell you, if they go into a stocking filler now, or if they're on it, what do they call that website? Etsy.
Etsy. Perhaps we could give away a jug on the site. Luke.
Yeah, of course, no problem. Yeah, I'm sure we could do that. I mean, like the thing I was saying that, I mean, one of the reasons I was thinking it would be nice to come on was that to sort of to make the point that, I'm not obviously trying to hawk my mum's wares, but like that like everywhere in Ireland, you've got a small pottery studio, pretty much. And if you look up the Crafts Council site, you'll find it. And not only pottery studio, but sort of woodwork studios and all these different things. And people going in and spending like for every like tenner you spend, you're supposed to it's like 4 times as much goes into the community as goes into if you spend money on Argos. And you're not just supporting the local craftspeople, but you're actually encouraging a nourishment of other people who want to get involved. And there's usually a guy sort of working as an apprentice, and you're bringing the whole thing on. I think we need to do that. We need to sort of nourish like Irish craft and design, and sort of the way we do that is we spend money. It's an important validation. I think that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing, and that I saw my parents sort of making stuff and maybe not being so good at selling stuff, and I ended up sort of getting better at selling stuff.
You became a kind of marketeer rather than
yeah.
It's very
No, I would totally up that street. I'm a great advocate for staying local and supporting local, particularly even local charities, and rather than big nationals. And if you need to go see a solicitor or accountant, go to the fella on the street. Don't go into town or the big firms that you'd see in London or anything like that. So, and I think Broadsheet did something on staying local a while back.
Yeah, a pretty keen column. But and we'll have Irish made stuff right up towards Christmas, including Luke's mum's jokes.
Great.
Careful now.
Anna.
Neil, what are you doing for Christmas now for the site?
Yes, Neil.
John is taking me to the Tate and St. Ives. So what are you doing?
The Tate and St. Ives.
That's where the
That's not very Christmassy.
The pots. Stephen, I see you yawning. If you need to knock off at any point, please.
Yeah, I'm tired, but it's very interesting, your platform and the people. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm tired, but that kind of goes with the.
Okay, well, if you want to take a rest here, you can have a little sleep there. That's fine. Vanessa, I wanted to talk to you about the.
Can I just before you start? Will you be back for Christmas, Stephen? Will you be back from Russia, or sorry? I know you told us how long this is all going to take, but.
Yeah, I'm kind of it. Yeah, no, I'm back on the. I'm leaving on the, or I'm going into hospital on the 20th of November, and I stay there for. If everything goes well, I stay there for 30 days. It could last as long as 35 days, but I'm back during Christmas week, and but then I go into complete lockdown. I'm quite happy to be coming back here. There's just the big issues that people have coming back from this. You have very low immunity, and so. You have to just avoid people, and just so my wife will be the Rottweiler at the door. There is no Christmas in this house, and so busy. Yeah, so we've no really problems with that. But then there's like 2 months of lockdown. Can't go to gyms, can't go to do any of that thing. And the problems that people have had is that they're generally. A lot of people affected by MS are generally ladies, and they're generally at that child wanting bearing age, and they would be prone to Jim Halligan questions and all that kind of thing. But they but it's topical. I'm trying to say topical, and so anyway, the thing is that when they go to schools and they come back, I mean that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is the flu, and the fact that Ireland is quite I got really bad dose of the flu in normal life last year, so something like that can be very grave for me this year. So it's really I go Michael Jackson style lockdown, gloves and masks, and and just trying to stay germ free, and that generally implies avoiding people because they are a harbor of germs.
Terrible though. And when you're in the complete isolation, are you like in a glass stuff?
It's Boy in the Bubble stuff, if anybody remembers the movie, So, and I remember the whole town. I lived in the 80s in Ireland, which many of you did possibly, when the entire town would be affected by a movie. And I remember
talk, yes. A bit like JR.
The Champ. And there was real moments. The Champ, and there was the Boy in the Bubble, you know? That was another one where the town went into heartbreak for a week.
It was John Travolta, wasn't it? Yes. In the lead, wasn't it?
Was he?
The boy in the Bubble.
John Travolta was the boy, yeah.
Was he?
Was he? Yeah, as a child actor. There you go. We'll all have to revamp our.
He was sort of an adolescent in the Bubble, wasn't he? Rather than he was a sort of post 17-year-old in the Bubble.
It was John. Well, you did look at you. It
yeah,
was John Travolta. Yeah.
How about that?
I have something else for you. It was the 70s, not the 80s. So you're 10 years older than you're letting on, Stephen.
But it played an Irish Telly. It played an Irish Telly in the 80s.
Because we got it late. That's what I was talking about. In Kilkenny, we've always had 3 channels. I come from Granard, 3-channel land. It used to break my heart to go visit people in places like Galway and things where they only had Anything Goes, and we didn't have Swap Shop and all the sophistication of life at home in Granard.
We didn't have those channels in Cork either. We just had RT1.
I think it led to a big split, actually. I think sort of culturally and psychically. I think that the programming we were getting from BBC was of a superior sort.
Sure.
I mean, RT were goodness. So
we got that close to the border because it came. You had, I don't know how many miles. The reception of like I've always grown up as a kid with BBC, with Tiswas, Swap Shop, all of that thing. So while the Neanderthal cousins in Cork, Galway, and these outlands, they had nothing. 2 Angus McInally and 2 channels. No, come on. How can you develop?
Surely we had Pat's Chat was back in the day. You couldn't top that. No British kids show could top Pat's Chat.
No.
Pat's Chat.
Yeah, no. Pat, I'm not sure whether Pat Inglesby is still alive. I hope he is. But
I think he's
kind of grumpy. I don't know if you've ever approached him.
He's a poet. He's a poet. Have you ever met a friendly, upbeat, positive poet?
Yeah, no, I knew he was a poet. Yeah.
But it's not Patrick Kavanagh's hat. It's like Pat's hat, and you want to chat with Pat's hat. And I went up to him anyway for the chat when I was a kid.
Anyway, he is alive.
He's often outside
here.
I won't be doing that in a hurry again.
You were going to ask me something there, Jan, before I
was just
asking Stephen about his holidays.
We touched on the Trackage scandal last week.
Yeah.
We were speculating on how many that they weren't coming clean on how many. And this afternoon, Bank of Ireland announced that there were 6,000 that they've discovered.
Yeah.
Newly discovered, which will.
I told you to be patient. I told you to wait till the end of the month. It was going to all come out.
Yeah, well, presumably this is just the start. I mean, there's more, right?
Well, yeah, there's definitely one bigger one than Bank of Ireland, definitely.
And that's Ulster Bank, is it?
No. I wouldn't know. It's not Ulster Bank, no.
Why can't we even speculate on these banks? We can't name them. Is there something? I mean, where we're going to get in trouble if we name these banks?
I wouldn't think so, but you'd have to make sure that our information is right. I'm not privy to all that, but I just know from personal experience the general behaviour would suggest
that there's more to come from AIB.
Oh no, I don't think it's AIB. No.
You sound like you know, Vanessa.
I do know.
Hardly any left.
Yeah.
No, there's one more I think that is going to be slightly worse. Well, what I would say is that Bank of Ireland wouldn't have written a lot of family home mortgages, not at the scale of some of the other banks. So that will give you an idea that there's a few more to come.
Okay.
If you know what I mean. The Bank of Ireland would have been quite prudent in terms of what they were issuing loans for.
It's incredible.
Well, maybe not madly prudent, but...
Okay, before we just go there, Olga, welcome, Olga.
Thanks, John. How are you? Hey, guys.
She's who's just come in from town from a shift. which is a work shift, not a.
I think the joke is gone.
It's with the new.
What's been your favorite shift over the past 2 weeks, Olga? Because you've had a lot of shifts. What's been your favorite one?
I couldn't possibly tell.
I'll do tomorrow's papers there? Or?
We just have the Examiner. If you want to look at that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Okay, 2 seconds. Sorry.
That's great. Okay.
Any second. So here we go. Can you see it there?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, Alison O'Connor has written. It's obviously written an opinion piece. That's just the top of under the mast there. The women I worry about are those who work in the background in the male-dominated Leinster House. So it's been a lot of talk, I think, about Leinster House and if anything will come out of in the wake of the Gate Theatre and all the rest.
Who is that?
The picture sequence is it's really good actually. It's by Larry. The photographer is Larry Cummins, and it's of Ruth Slattery. So she's the mother of Ina Shannon player Anthony Slattery, who was playing in
Schools Rugby, betcha.
Skeena Skull. I think it's Skeena, isn't that football? Yeah, Skeena Skull football finals in Páirc Uí Rinn, Cork. Yes, today. So, yeah, I think that's the GA Gaelic football. So, basically, yeah, that's just before her son. I think his team won rather. Then, so 42,000 to receive refunds over pension cuts. Doherty guarantees fixed to career break shortfall. Daniel McConnell written it. The government has to approve measures next week, which will see 42,000 people hit by bonkers pension reductions refunded. The Irish Examiner can reveal Social Protection Minister Regina Doherty has guaranteed to fix the pension anomaly, which has seen women and men who took time out of their careers hit with reduced pensions of up to €1,500 a year because of a 2012 rule change.
Vanessa, what's that all about?
It would appear that people that wouldn't have done a full career of work, that would have say they didn't have 20 or 30 years work behind them, they wouldn't have paid PRSI or your stamp for consecutively for a number of years. They didn't qualify for a contributory pension, and they probably should have, because they would have been forced to give up work to stay at home with their kids. Because you have to remember, until the early 70s, you had to, once you got married, you had to give up your job in some employments.
Yeah.
So that's what that is. So rather than penalise, but they're principally women, for giving up work earlier when they wanted to work, to pay, and for not giving them their full contributory pension. Let's be honest with you, the contributory pension at the moment is only €206. So why there was ever even an argument over it is a mystery to me, but there you go.
Right. The Irish traditions.
Thanks, me for that, Vanessa. Daniel McConnell also has a piece in the right there. Independent Alliance ministers decide against trip to North Korea, so that's off.
Thank Christ for that.
I think the Independent Alliance is just falling apart anyway. I think they'd be better off moving to Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you've got a problem with that?
Well, I just think they're falling apart. They're literally a group of solo acts that have stitched together a little plan, hatched a plan to get into government, into ministerial jobs. And it seems to have been Shane Ross that has put them all together. And they're just not getting on. And they in one way, they hate each other. Sure, I can't see Shane Ross, meeting up with the lads and figuring out motives at meetings and pre-meeting agendas and all this. Can you see Shane Ross ringing Boxer up and saying, would you come off the office on the lunch?
I don't know what ideology binds them all. I mean,
ministerial job, that's what binds them all. That's their common thread.
Exactly. Payment.
There's no ideology, it's ministerial
yeah.
pensions, goodies, cars, interviewing candidates. Are you right there, Pet?
Olga, is there any?
There's another story at the bottom there. TV license system broken. So by Fiachra O'Connor, the government is set to make a second bid to replace the TV licence fee with a new charge to include Netflix and other online sites after admitting the existing system is broken.
Jesus.
So
they don't own Netflix. They can't. Come on. I mean,
joke. If I'm being this is at the Public Accounts Committee. Is it Brendan Griffin or Mark Griffin? Sorry, Mark Griffin. The Department of Communications General Secretary said, "If I'm being brutally honest, I'd say the TV licence system is broken, and I'm not sure if it can be fixed." If you look at the next generation, I have a 23-year-old and a 19-year-old, and I can't remember the last time I saw them sit down and watch TV. They watch online websites, YouTube, Netflix. There is a huge change in trend, so it is credible to have a TV license for a TV. So is it credible to have a TV license for TV only? We've had this debate before, but it is a space we need to look at again. So
it's an absolute disgrace that if they go down that road. God, that is such an insult to.
Actually, so that quote that I just read out actually was from Fianna Fáil TD Shane Castles, just to clarify that. Beg your pardon.
Nearly, if that is what they're saying.
If there's a generation of this country that don't watch TV, that don't have cable service, there's a reason for that. So just slapping a broadcasting charge on them is, it's just disgraceful, disgusting.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, Luke.
Yeah, well, I think
you don't watch television much.
I don't, but I mean, I probably watch as much sort of video, content, from sort of, like through my laptop or whatever. But I think it takes a long time, right, for them to sort out something that they should have known was changing 10 years ago, and they've done nothing but talk about it since. It's just it's very messy again. It's not.
But like if we're watching YouTube, like is my license fee then going to start going to Markiplier or all these YouTube superstars who are uploading videos of themselves playing video games? Am I going to start seeing the money's going that way?
Well, it's turned into a tax, hasn't it? So it's basically like a tax that sort of they don't let go of, and they're scrabbling around trying to sort of justify it. But really, it's a tax on something that doesn't exist anymore.
They want a monopoly over what?
Here's the thing.
Should people be paying a tax for watching Broadsheet on the telly? That'd be nice if we could get some of that.
I'm just saying, what gets subscription? Do you think RT should just go to subscription-only service?
Somebody was saying, isn't it incredible that in 2011, I don't remember, 2011 was a bad year for, I think, everybody, like broke and everything. But they were paying Ryan Tubridy 800 grand. I mean, I don't, it's unfair to pick on, well.
And you know what? They still would be paying him that kind of money if there hadn't been this absolute outroaring about what the public sector were getting paid. Members also around the same time as Roddy Malloy was found out, all this, what the ministers were all that were, resigning from Fianna Fáil, and there was this exodus. So there was a culture of every big ticket was being hauled in, and
But to think, and again, I don't want to go into the personalities, but like Marion Finucane on 300 grand now, or 250,000. It's just,
and what age is she, Marion?
I have no idea, but how can they sustain that? It's a bit like people on 100. They're
sustaining it because they have income from licenses.
Of course, yeah, I know how.
And they have very strong enforcement to collect that money, and then they have commercial income through advertising, and then they have endorsement income or product placement, or I'm sure. Well, I'm pretty sure wardrobe and all that is supplied, from various designers and Sony mics and
But just to play devil's advocate, without getting into specifics of who gets paid what, like showbiz, well, that's what it is. Showbiz entertainers do get paid more for most of them, and this is why I don't want to mention names, because then we'll just get into pedantic splitting hairs. But for most of them, they're on contracts. They don't have the luxuries of long term, and this comes back to Mrs. Brown's bios from earlier. They don't have, they're on short term contracts essentially. I know now a lot of the RT folks aren't, but look at the likes of Graham Norton, who's he's a high quality, very popular presenter, and he's over in the UK making a lot more money.
Well, here's the thing: I don't you know, with the greatest respect to these people, I don't put that, they're not like the Tubridies of the world. They're not world class, you know, they're not at that.
Well, if they were world class, they'd be out there. They'd be over in America, or they'd be over in London, or they'd be, you know.
This is another aspect. That's another aspect. It's sort of like, oh, we have to keep them, you know, give them money so they be loyal and stuff. They're not loyal.
Do you know who says that as well? John Delaney. He says, this is what I'd get out in the marketplace. Like, what the fuck is going to employ you for $500,000 a year? You know, so Jesus.
Well, the editor,
say his job description.
Geraldine Kennedy, was on the same amount of money as the editor of the Sunday or the editor of the Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph.
Oh, no.
No, and she demanded it. She demanded parity with the managing director of the Irish Times. So they're both on like 300 grand, you know. And there were people who'd been let go because they couldn't pay shifts for them, you know.
Well, I'm going to start looking now for parity, John. I'm going to figure out now who I can benchmark myself against.
I could name a name, but we'd be sued.
Go on, go on.
I'll go the Times Irish edition.
Text it to me, Neil.
I will.
Sorry. I was just going to say, like it does seem that you know, like there's a sort of pattern there, both with, you know, sort of, you know, RTE, the Gate, you know, all these sort of you know, sort of little fiefdoms that sort of have arrived. I mean, I find it hard as, you know, sort of someone in the private sector, and, you know, a lot of you guys are the same thing, where, you know, you're scrapping and scraping for everything, and when people sort of get into this situation, circle the wagons, and then just don't, you know, sort of really deliver or sort of like live up to standards, it's very difficult to watch.
Yeah, the big money thing in RTE only came about because Gay Byrne, a station in Philadelphia, wanted to poach Gay Byrne.
Wow.
So he got an increase in his money, and then he lost his money in bad investments, and he needed to be on obviously a bigger wage. And then Pat Kenny started sniffing this. He got sort of the start of the big money, and then Jerry Ryan, and then presumably agents took over.
But John, I wonder, did a lot of the senior back office people there, I suspect they were well paid as well. You know, like, say, the head of finance, head of this, head of that, head of...
Well, again, it's a bit like, yeah, you'd find an editor
and it's also, John, it's also a bit of an unreal organisation, because they have all that site there, some of the most valuable real estate in the country. They got that for free.
Yeah.
All that infrastructure, even the buildings, were all developed for free. They're not like industry that had to go and like buy or rent or lease.
Yeah, so the profits they made on the sale of that land, they should go back to us rather than
Well, I think it's going to be introduced into their own accounts, isn't it? Well, we'll know at the end of this year, I suppose, 2017. But...
Yeah, I don't know how long we can go on with this. Like when Joe Duffy's talking to somebody on Liveline and they're scraping by, and it's like, oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but here's the thing, John. The majority of the Irish citizens are scraping by.
Yeah, but I know, but
you know, like, just because Leo pretends they're not doesn't mean it's not happening. You know.
We should all be investing in supermarkets and that.
Neil, do you think this is just sour grapes and begrudgery, a bit like kind of the Bono and Mrs. Brand's boys and all that?
No, I mean, I've always felt we're, despite what we read in the press, that we're taxed at a very, very high level, directly and indirectly in Ireland, and we don't get much return on investment as taxpayers. I don't, you know, we can argue the toss about, you know, is Pat Kenny great or not, or Marion Finucane. You know, entertainers, they say, they're going to get paid the big bucks. That's just the nature of the beast. But yeah.
But it's your books, Neil.
It's what?
It's your books. I mean, it's the same stage.
But we said this, was it last week with Martin, about your entire PRSI contribution, both as an employee and as your employer's portion against your PRSI number. It's very poor return for the Irish PAYE worker. It's very poor, and which is part of why these people have got their pensions backdated now. But then the people say our taxes are low. Our employment taxes may be in terms of saying what they might be in Scandinavia, but the indirect taxes we have here are ridiculous.
And that's often left out of these.
The stamp duties we have to pay on a car.
Well, the VAT.
VAT is one thing. Vehicle registration.
Yeah.
A car in the UK, it's okay. I know the pound is helpful at the moment, but this particular car now, I could buy in the UK for about 33,000 pounds. I come in around 40, and I have to start at 68, 67 here. Sorry, folks. Or my car insurance. Like, why can't I buy a BMW in Germany for the same price they pay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if they're really honest about it. So it's the indirect taxes that we are absolutely being ridden on.
Did you want to be in BMW?
I have one, John. I have one.
Wait a second. How did you? Where have you got a shopping centre in Lithuania?
I'm shopping centre equivalent.
I'll do the Times Irish edition as well. Is it?
Yeah, and so the Irish Times. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
There, so.
Okay. Awkward seconds.
Okay. Yeah. Do the crossword there while we're waiting.
Let them tick away. The front page on the Times Irish edition is Airbnb vows to get tough with rogue landlords.
Don't look at me.
Airbnb. So Airbnb are going to get tough. It's not the government getting tough with Airbnb, no. Okay.
No, it is.
I don't know. Sorry, John. I don't know. I only just put in like 2 seconds.
It looks like they're kind of trying to self-regulate. Is it that they're imposing a 180 night cap, rental cap?
They're probably trying to self-regulate before they get regulated. I
think that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Does anybody Airbnb?
Yeah, I've used Airbnb abroad.
Oh yeah. I haven't, but I would. Definitely give it a go.
Would you Airbnb though yourselves? Would you rent out a room, Airbnb it?
No,
I did, and I have a ton of friends in Barcelona. It's a massive issue in Barcelona, and you have a ton of friends running entire houses. All the thing that the fears that they talk about in Dublin about Airbnb eating up property, that's been the reality in Barcelona for the last 10 years. I remember meeting them when they arrived. They're from the San Francisco guys that they didn't exist, and they just arrived. And Barcelona was one of their first cities that they launched in, and they literally launched in a pub, in a bar called La Fiena, and now it is a massive, it is the massive thing, and it's rode the wave of Barcelona's mass tourism, and Ada Colau is busy she's trying to stamp them out. Friends of mine have had all their stuff closed down, and so they are the municipal Barcelona municipality is getting rid of it. They're having to regulate everything, and so they are.
They're going to get rid of Airbnb altogether.
Fining them, and they have done, and they are planning on upping the fines. But the thing is that what they're targeting is the people renting the apartments.
Yeah.
And because there are a lot of people, they're making good money. They just all they're putting, there, and that's all the reasons, all the fear that's kind of spun about Airbnb. They are real. I know people making money off it. I know people, they move in. They can turn an entire building that's in a really good location into, it just becomes flat, because all the people are doing is they just pay the deposit and they got another flat and then they just Airbnb it. And so it is a massive issue, especially for cities like Barcelona that has massive tourism. So Dublin will have it as well, man. I try to get a room, a hotel room for next Saturday. Couldn't buy a hotel room. They were like €250 a night for next Saturday night. There's a lot of stuff going on, but Dublin has shortages,
$250, and did you go Airbnb?
No, I didn't. But I mean, that's the way you would have. I would have looked at it, and for Dublin.
Much would Airbnb?
I don't know, but it's as bad. It's according to your budget, so you would get Airbnb for 50 quid a night or something like that with somebody. But I mean, there's all sorts. I mean, you can rent the whole apartment, you can rent the whole house. I've used it for years, and it works out quite well in certain cities, and you can be lucky. I use it all the time in Madrid. Every time I stay there, because there's no hotel close to the venue I use there, so that I've got to know. They're pretty good at protecting the numbers and all of that, you know. You kind of use them once and then get to know that person. Then you don't have to pay the Airbnb commission the next time.
There's some great properties up on it, though. You get some really great properties. There's lighthouses now, I think.
I think it actually is going to be, you know, quite a significant player in the sort of the future. I mean, not necessarily Airbnb, but sort of the sort of realization that there's value there in sort of demand locations. I mean, wasn't there a 2-bedroom apartment there in Temple Bar that sold for twice the expected price? And then when they looked into it, they found that it had 80 grand a year in income from Airbnb. So, you know, that's a sort of a good illustration of the sort of like native value that's there in properties in the right places for short-term lets. And I think that's something that sort of is, you know, is going to eat away at the available sort of, you know, good rental property in the likes of Dublin and Barcelona and whatever.
Do you know what I wonder is it hiding the true, more accurate visitor numbers to Dublin? You know, the way it would normally be hotel rooms.
Yeah, yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's growing at a huge rate.
Yeah, because you know they may not record the bed night.
Yeah, well, not only like in the same way Stephen was saying that, like, you know, sort of people get to know each other, and you know, it's off the books the next time, you know.
The Airbnb phenomenon is like
cancer.
Cancer, Stephen, isn't it? It's the Uberization of everything, isn't it? I mean, it's
sure. It's the economy. What did they call that economy? The sharing economy, isn't it?
Yeah, the delivery economy, kind of.
Yeah, but I think there's a sort of, you know, who is it called? Was it Reiner? Was called, you know, they're talking about like tooth and nail economics. That's usually what's behind these sort of commodifications of like services and whatever else.
Yeah. But you know, regardless of what we're talking about here, there's huge demand for it, and that can't be ignored either. Like, so there has to be a happy medium. Like, we've already given the 2 fingers to Uber from a certain perspective in Ireland, which is a shame because it's all that I use in the States. And there's some other wonderful services that, you know, you see from startups in the States, like even finding parking spaces when you're out. There's another car rental scheme I saw. It's a bit like the Go Car, except, you know, anyone can. Well, not anyone, but there's certain criteria. But, you know, people can leave their car in their drive and run a similar scheme to kind of like the Go Car. And, you know, there's big demand for those services. So, you know, we can't really legislate them out of the country. It's
and they're happening, I think, in other parts of the world. These things are live and happening. So Ireland should have no problem in going, okay, that's what's going on there. Nothing is unprecedented by the time it's hitting Ireland. That's what I perceive. And BlaBlaCar, that's a massive one in Spain. You getting a lift, you know, and you can literally, the app you can look at where everybody's going, wherever you're going in Spain. You can just look on the app and go, I'm going from there to there, and you'll have you'll get a lift.
Yeah, and that's the world we're going to end up in when automated cars do come in. There will be no need for anyone to own a car because you'll just.
Do you know what? I'd say I'll be long gone by then, so I'm not bothered.
Oh well, Vanessa, unless you're planning on going in the next 10 years.
Send that BMW.
We just go through the towns, the Irish towns.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. 2 seconds.
Awkward a few seconds as we wait.
Don't we do the crossword?
For a few seconds while we look at Kevin Spacey in makeup.
I know. It doesn't look he looks actually even more creepy in that, doesn't he?
So
he's playing John Paul Getty.
He was playing.
He was, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe he's gay.
Has there been a fall from grace so grumpy and vicious?
But has there a formal investigation by the police taken place over the initial allegation by Rapp. And surely the ages that were involved, that would warrant it.
Well, I think they're just piling up now. There's
I definitely think there was some kind of police investigation in the UK.
There was in the UK, but I thought, like, given the age Rapp was when he claimed that this I don't know, the assault or behavior, I don't know how he worded it, happened. Surely to God that would warrant the police going, well, given the ages involved, we have to look into this. We're obliged to look into this.
Mm.
well,
Maybe today they won't, but it was about 20 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, that's a terrible makeup job, though, isn't it? Christopher Plummer's going to play his part now in this part. He's already filmed it, but they're going to.
From what I read, it's a significant amount of hassle, but Ridley Scott was determined to do it to reshoot the scenes. So,
okay.
I thought they pulled it. Did they not pull Spacey's part of that movie?
No, they just pulled it casting.
Yeah.
They're going to go back.
No, I think it's not going out.
Oh, when I heard it tonight, now it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Better information. Being in the business and show business.
There you go. Well, not Kevin Spacey's, but and I do find it amazing, this story that like almost like Kevin Spacey is gay. I mean, Ireland is just so full of Kevin Spacey, the gay Kevin Spacey, a long time ago, where the whole Colin Farrell breakthrough was apparently came out of Reynards and Kevin Spacey.
No. Well, we met. They starred in the same movie, The Ordinary Decent Criminal. I'm sure Kevin took a shine to Colin, but anyway. All good.
Smoke without fire.
Can you?
But you see the two. Sorry to interrupt, but you see from the comedy world, Louis C.K. has been more formally mentioned now in allegations. Although those allegations have been knocking around a very long time. Stephen, you're aware of that, I'm sure.
Louis C.K. How do you spell Louis? L-O-U-I-S, is it?
Yeah.
There's also talk he's got that film of, sort of...
It's C.K. one word, yeah?
C.K. one word.
It looks like his film might be pulled as well. They're sort of wondering about that. It has a sort of elderly man, suspect pedophile sort of, which is a sort of dodgy theme at the moment anyway. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Who, Louis?
Yeah.
Oh.
Good.
I've never heard of this guy before, so I'm more interested in knowing who he is.
Louis C.K.
It's on the New York Times, Vanessa, if you go to their website.
Canadians, Vanessa.
I always felt he was
overrated.
overrated.
Give me a name of a movie he was in.
He's
just a stand-up.
No, he was in Trumbo.
He has done movies.
Don't forget Steven Seagal as well. He was mentioned in the news
let me
today.
see now. What's he been up to?
Hey,
Vanessa,
he's been kitty fiddling.
Sorry, I'll get it.
Yeah. So do you want to look at the Irish Times? The Irish Times, the third level salary cap raised to 250,000 to attract staff. Move means senior academics will be on higher salaries than Taoiseach. Government to come under pressure to raise pay limits for senior public servants. That's a story by Carl O'Brien. He's the education editor there. So basically, universities are to be allowed to hire staff and salaries higher than the Taoiseach under new measures. The move is aimed at attracting top academic talent from universities in the UK and elsewhere in light of the uncertainty caused by Brexit. There is speculation that a salary of up to 300,000 is being considered for the next Garda Commissioner. So there's
forces redress over trackers. So they.
Central bank forces redress over trackers. Yeah. So just at the figure there, 10,300. So that's the number of Bank of Ireland customers due compensation over it. The central bank has forced Bank of Ireland to include an additional 6,000 customers, including 1,800 of its own staff, in its tracker mortgage scandal. Tracker's mortgage compensation scheme. Sorry. This brings the total number, like I said, 10,300. The industry-wide compensation scheme concerns thousands of customers who were wrongly switched from cheaper tracker mortgages to variable rate contracts. In some cases without being informed, all that. That's a story by Owen Burke-Kennedy. And then down there, there's about the North Korea trip being cancelled. I'm just looking there. Noel Whelan John Halligan's fantasies about a diplomatic mission to North Korea reveal a tendency towards self-delusion.
Do you know something? I feel very sorry for John Halligan. I think they're just picking on him. I think you're also picking on him.
Me?
I think you're you're piling in on him.
But John, what were three lads from Ireland going to do in terms of North Korea? That
Yeah, but so what? I mean, we send people to South Africa to talk about the peace process and the reconciliation and how we punch above our weight as far as we're told continuously.
John, I've no problem.
I think North Korea is
I've no problem with him going to North Korea. I think he's taking a hiding because I think there's no backup within the alliance to stand with him, and he's out on his own. So he's the only one whose face is getting slapped over this. His own department advisors or his own department press office are nowhere near him at the moment, and none of his alliance colleagues. I've no problem with him going out to North Korea. I don't think it's all that bad an idea.
No.
Sorry, can I just interrupt there as well? There's a story at the bottom of the page, on the Irish Times, and it's just pay restoration, cuts imposed on TDs and most other public servants staff under financial emergency legislation will be reversed by July 2021. Just to say. Yeah.
That's a relief.
Yeah. And you saw on the Gay Theatre, they've appointed an expert, is it Gay Cunningham, to look into the allegations. And there's a story there at the bottom of the Times edition, or the Times Ireland edition by Ellen Coyne, just that rape victims face 8-month delays for counselling appointments at crisis centres, I'm guessing because of cuts in funding. But yeah, is there anything else you want to look at there on those, John?
Could you just whiz down to some of the UK papers?
Yeah. So there's The Guardian. There's Trump in China. I think he arrived yesterday, didn't he? Get breaks a deal fast. Business chiefs tell PM British and Europeans unite to seek end to deadlock on withdrawal talks.
So it's Trump is a year on, and the world hasn't ended. Neil, as you predicted.
Yeah, it's an interesting picture. If you could just go back, sorry, Olga.
No.
So that's kind of a submissive handshake that he's given Xi. But I don't know if anyone caught his speech in China when he talked about, he kind of raised a few eyebrows. He when he talked about their trade surplus, the Chinese trade surplus, and he said, who would blame them? So there was an element of pandering there, and softened his rhetoric from previous dialogue. So
do you not find his language is also a bit childish and amateur? The very best. There was no great speech deftness to it. Do you know what I mean? Oratory or something.
He's a huge rock star over there.
Is he?
Look, I don't know if you've been watching it. Any of the coverage of his visit.
I haven't. I know they put Trump's face on papers just to annoy me, so I just tried to look away, to be honest.
Well, you got 7 more years to go.
I think so.
So are you admitting that he might win a second term?
Oh, I've always said he'll win a second term.
Yeah.
No.
Did you? Well, who they have to run? Who the Democrats got to run against him?
No one.
Nobody.
They're suggesting that it could be done in Brazil. This is the lady who's written the book about she was chairman of the Democratic National Committee last year. She was interim chairwoman person. And she's written a book where she's basically said that the Democrats rigged it for Hillary. Bernie Sanders was cheated out of the nomination, and that she dedicates the book to a young researcher called Seth Rich, who was murdered last summer. And he is believed to be the person who leaked all the information to WikiLeaks from the DNC because he was so disgusted by the way they treated Bernie Sanders. He was then murdered. She's dedicated her book to him. So it's brought all that back up.
Where is Bernie gone?
Stuff you won't be reading in the mainstream news, I'm sorry.
Tinfoil hat time.
Did you bring yours now? Did you bring yours, Neil?
Oh, I didn't. I'll have it next week. Oh, there we go.
It's a Garth Brooks hat.
But remember the name Seth Rich, and I think your girl Hillary's in big trouble, Vanessa, as I predicted.
What is Bernie at?
Do you know what? I'd say at this stage she doesn't give a shite. She's done. She's like Noreen. She's gone. She doesn't care. Her day is done now. She gave it a go, and that's it.
She's got a book.
Bernie Sanders was cheated out of the nomination, but he still supported Hillary. And this talk that he was given, him and his wife were given the contract to place the ads for his campaign, which is a lot of millions he made. He's bought a new lakeside house near Vermont, and so he's not complaining really. I don't think he felt that he would ever become president. So
he's given up his revolution.
We took the money.
Yeah. Well, I think
money. The socialist.
But do you know what they all do in the end, John?
That's shocking.
Yeah, it is shocking. It is. But again,
we'd all do it if we were in that boat.
You won't be reading that in Katrina Perry's book on America or. In the Irish Times. Are there any other of the English papers? Just
okay.
There's your new minister there. There's the new replacement there. She's in her togs. Now,
Stephen, I wanted just before we went, if you could just give us the details for Sunday's gig.
Yeah. It's in the Grand Social. It's early start because it's a Sunday, so the doors open 7 o'clock, and the show starts at 7:30. We got comedy with Eric Lawler, Willie White. We got the brothers O'Snodagy, let's call them, Colm and Ronan. We've got Nuala Leonard, slam poet, and we've got who else? We got Pete Holiday, the guy who taught myself that brought myself and Johnny together when we did music and media management out in Ballyfermot in the Rock School. Right. And so Pete's got a new rocking band called the Troubled Pilgrims, I think. New album just out. So it's going to be a cool little event, you know. And at the end of it, we'll give away these tickets for the playoff game, and we also have a bit of sponsorship for a load of spot prizes on the night from the people like the Hemp Museum, from the Liberation Clothing, and so for a €5 ticket we'll be raffling that kind of stuff, and we got a bit of merch from the different artists and stuff like that. So it's just a bit of fun, and because I'm practically done with if anybody wants to come along, send me an email, and I'm not really. It's not the ticket selling for the show is not really what I'm fundraising with. Kind of using it to kind of say goodbye and thanks to a lot of people, and we'll do this raffle for the tickets live, which hopefully I'm going to sell an amazing amount of them in the next 2-3 days once the soccer people start flipping out with when the playoffs gets real.
And
so.
How much would you get on the open market for those tickets?
I don't know. I imagine once it comes around after tomorrow, I don't know what the results. I don't know what good or bad result. I think Ireland will possibly come back with 0-0 or something like that from Denmark, and then it's anybody's. So everybody, it's a piece of history for soccer fans, to be in the final one before it's in the Aviva, and then they're on the road to Russia. And
like you were.
Well, that's I think that's kind of how I got the ticket. Somehow it kind of appealed to somebody inside the FEI that we're both on the road to Russia and blah blah blah. So I'll be over there doing a recce for the soccer supporters. That's what I was doing. Yeah, it's kind of I was doing that as a nixer on the last World Cup in Brazil, and I set up a company called hostcitybooking.com, which was I was like a fixer for people going to Natal, which was one of the anybody going to Brazil, and so I made a bit of money. Not the fortune I was supposed to make, but certainly not that.
A bit of a Pat Hickey.
Yeah, and Pat Hickey's another story. When I went down to, I was around for the Olympics down there as well, and I was actually commissioned to get pictures of Pat when he was on the loose, let's say, around Rio, or not on the loose, when he was in Carcel, when he was behind bars.
Oh, did you get hold of the picture?
You know, I had them all around. I had them around. The Irish press were anxious for a picture of him in the orange suit. You know, the prison gear. And I spoke with a couple of people. You're never that far from a favela in Rio, and I know people who work in kind of charities and NGOs and stuff in the favela. So I said, look, can you get a picture? Bangu was the name of that famous jail where Hickey was. And I've no love for the man because he did mess. Aside from the tickets, he did a lot of messing about. He was very arrogant, and it wasn't a mystery to me why nobody appeared in his support from Ireland or from anywhere. And so on the people living in Rio on the ground, when he arrived, he commissioned, or he didn't commission. He basically arrived. He told everybody that they had no budget. The Irish Olympic Committee had no budget. And but he came and he asked the ambassador, which filtered down to me. I would have been well known. We had a thing called the IBN Rio, which is the Irish Business Network in Rio, which really is there was only 3 of us regularly at the meetings. You know, it's quite a small thing, but it came down from the embassy that you know, they were looking for people who would be interested in looking after the WAGs and guiding the athletes and WAGs. And so it didn't. That job, you know, because it would be a job to do it properly, and but it came with no budget for anything. So he arrived in Rio at the Rio Olympics with not a penny to put it. Yeah, he wanted an Irish house. They had an Irish house at the London Olympics. They wanted a lot of things, and none of those things could they have because and I was running around. I literally found them a house. I found them 3 houses, and they had no money for it. And so then the whole controversy broke afterwards, and I was on my way back to Ireland, and I caught the tail end of that, which was good crack. So he's still going on. He's not going to go back there, I don't think.
No.
And you're 300 grand down at least. You know, $1 million down or whatever. Yeah, it's outrageous. Guys, can I hit the road and I'll say good night and thank you very much. And I don't know when we'll see, but I'll keep an eye on you. And I'll be talking with
Johnny. Will keep us updated anyway.
Yeah,
there we go, you know? Yeah. And
maybe we'll talk to you in Moscow as well.
And like I said, send me a mail. And if anybody wants to come on Sunday night, we'll put you on the list. And it's like I said, it's not about. This is not about selling tickets on the door for me, although I want people in the room. If I fill the room, I don't have to pay for the room. So I want bodies in there as well. But it's like, you know, in the end, I'm pushing tickets for the next 2 days, and that's where we'll get the last bit of fun in. And then I'm going to die for 3 days, go to sleep.
Well,
tired.
The best of luck, Stephen. We'll talk to you soon anyway. We'll keep in touch with Johnny through Johnny and everything. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Best of luck.
Bye, Stephen.
Talk to you later.
Neil, I wanted to ask you briefly about Sadie. And Neil is a new father, a daughter called Sadie, and she has colic or had colic. Or?
No, I got that one wrong, which Vanessa would be delighted to hear. I think I got the colic wrong. She was just being cranky.
See, now, Neil, for the first few days now, she's great. There's nothing to all this at all. Oh, it's marvellous.
She's still great. She's having a bit of a cry, and all she wants is her daddy to give her an old hug.
Yeah.
That's all.
Neil is going to show us all his stretch marks in a minute. You know, 'cause he did everything. Yeah.
Neil, how's it being a father?
Yeah, it's good. It's a different ball game. So you want to make sure you're ready to go down that path if you're choosing to do it. I wouldn't be doing it if I was 21. I wouldn't be out for it.
No.
But no, it's great.
And you have to feed her at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m.
Yeah, there was no instructions, but you feed them every time they cry.
Your nipples all cracked from feeding her, are they?
I tell you, well, I have 2 nipples, so I'm doing okay.
Are they bleeding?
Vanessa, please.
No, she's great. It's a different world. It changed your perspective on life and all that.
Yeah. Can I just give you a bit of advice there, Niall? Do you know now at the moment Sadie's in these little all-in-ones and onesies
I tell you, they're great.
and stuff like that, right? And then there'll come a stage around 2, 3 maybe where all they want is pink, glitter, sparkles, frills, ridiculous stuff. Right, indulge every minute of it, because suddenly you look and all they're wearing are baggy jumpers, tracksuit pants, and their face is in a screen the whole time. So when she wants you to bring her to Frozen on Ice and all this, go, because the day'll come where she's not going to talk to you for days.
For years.
Oh, it will go on, yeah, but it'll all happen so quick. So.
But then when I'm old, because girls look after their dads and boys look after their moms. So when I'm old, she'll put me in a good home.
And then she'll change your nappy then.
And I'll be old enough to appreciate it.
I'll get any last minute newspapers and stuff.
Well, just what we've been through, John. There's no more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I think we shall say goodnight to Luke Brennan, to Stephen Garland, who's left us now, to Neil Curran and Sadie and George and Fiona in the Curran household, Olga Cronin from the Sheet. Thanks, Olga, for joining us.
No worries.
And Vanessa Foran. We didn't hear from Shayna tonight. We were going to have Shane O'Neill on. Maybe she'll come on next week.
She posted on the main board that there was connection issues, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully we'll have her on next week. In the meantime, thank you so much. I had a very nice show.
I think John, the public are waiting for an update on when the conspiracy theories episode is going out, and will it coincide with the onesie Christmas special?
Yeah. No. I think a conspiracy special next week is needed. I'll go toe to toe, as I said, with anybody on.
No, okay, but you see, it's great to say you're doing it now, but by next week there might be another half a dozen dirty old fellas now coming out of the woodwork, and we're going to have to talk to them. And in addition to trackers, there's going to be, the staff mortgages and staff loans and all this is going to come out. You know what I mean? So there's going to be all other stuff. It'll be a conspiracy that that they don't want you to have a conspiracy show, John.
Well, maybe John should make it a weekly feature of the show to chime us out, like this week's conspiracy theory: the structures on the dark side of the moon.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I think conspiracy theories are going to be mainstream. Like, some of the stuff that you guys are sort of laughing at now, in a year's time, you'll be saying, "Oh God," Of course, they're entirely true, and now what? Alko, did you want to say anything?
No, I just actually have to go. I'm really sorry. Yeah. But I'll chat to you guys next week. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully see you on the site tomorrow, or on Broadsheet on the Telly next week. Thank you very much. Namaste. Thank you to everybody. Bye now.